So I'm hoping that what we talk about stirs things up and gives you a lot to think about. If everything you hear makes sense and is old hat, then I'm not doing my job very well. Okay? Because whenever we listen to the teachings, we're hearing something that often goes against some of our very ingrained bad habits, especially our ignorance, especially our self-centered attitude. So often we get stirred up when we hear these kinds of things. Yeah, but that's okay. Nothing wrong with getting stirred up. It makes us look inside and examine ourselves a little bit more. Yeah. When we think we've got it all down pat and we've solved it all and everything's clear, then we're really dumb. Yeah? Have you ever noticed that the people who are very arrogant are usually quite close-minded? You know, they can't, and so their knowledge is often very limited. Okay, so we're going to keep reading in His Holiness's book. I did 2 sentences, give me credit. People who've been around for a while know it takes me sometimes a while to get through things. So, okay. So, our own counterproductive emotions are the source of the trouble in the world. Once they are generated, they harm us both superficially and deeply. Because they make problems for us in this life, and then they make us do actions. That's what the meaning of create karma. That leaves imprints on our mind stream, and that creates problems for us in future lives. Okay, so these afflictive emotions accomplish nothing but trouble from beginning to end. If we tried to counteract each and every one individually, we would find ourselves in an endless struggle. So what is the root cause of afflictive emotions that we can address more fruitfully? So we have so many different kinds of afflictive emotions. Actually, afflictive emotions isn't the best translation for the Sanskrit term klesha, because we do have afflictive emotions like anger and resentment and attachment, pride, jealousy, things like that. But also included in this category are all sorts of wrong conceptions we have about the way things exist. Or also things like doubt, ignorance, confusion, laziness. We don't really consider those kinds of things emotions, do we? Yeah. So even whenever it says afflictive emotions here, don't think afflictive emotions. Yeah. Think things that are an obstacle to gaining liberation, to freeing our mind. Okay, so like I said, it includes all sorts of doubt, all sorts of wrong attitudes and views and things like that. So sometimes the translation that we use is just afflictions, meaning mental afflictions. But that's what we're talking about here. Okay? And some of them are easy to recognize as problematic. Yeah? Anger isn't too difficult. Especially other people's anger. Their anger is very problematic. Our anger's right. Yeah, their anger's a problem. Yeah, something's wrong there. But also things, we recognize greed as an afflictive emotion. If somebody's greedy, that has not a very good connotation. But if somebody is very attached to something or someone, we often think that's kind of good. There's kind of this kind of sticky emotional relationship or something. We can't bear to separate. either from a person or our possessions, or we can be attached to our reputation, attached to hearing praise, all sorts of things that regular society just considers very normal. You know, everybody wants to have a good reputation, nothing wrong with that. Right? I mean, that's kind of the way we view it, isn't it? Society and normal. You know, everybody, we all want a good reputation in whatever little area, whatever little neck of the woods we hang out in. But we don't realize that attachment to that, having a good reputation, can bring us a lot of problems. No, because when we're attached to having a good reputation, then we do all sorts of things to try and make other people think well of us, or all sorts of things to boost our own image in a group of people. And so many times we do things that are actually quite damaging and harmful to ourselves and others in order to boost our image. Just ask some of the politicians and CEOs who have, you know, gotten busted in the last few years. Yeah? Don't you think? You know, people, on one hand we could say, oh, they were greedy. But in another way, they were probably just trying to, you know, have a better reputation and have people think better of them. And so what better way than to just exercise the power you get either through politics or through money to make yourself look better. Yeah, and we think as long as you don't get caught, well, nothing really so bad about it. I mean, after all, everybody does it, right? Well, almost everybody. Well, no, pretty much everybody. So it's not fair that I get caught and they don't get caught. Okay, we kind of think like this. Yeah, but you can see there that the attachment to something makes us act in ways that, you know, are very damaging to other people. And some of those things may be legal, some of them may be illegal. Just ask John Edwards. You know, but that doesn't mean that morally they're okay, or ethically they're okay. You know, because if they come from a really very self-centered, attached state of mind, whether we get caught or not, whether we get prosecuted or not, is not the issue. You know, because still those imprints of the negative actions are on our mind stream, and they will bring about problems either later this life or in future lives. Okay, so yeah, so what's the root cause of all these different afflictions? Ignorance. Oh yeah, great. That sounds good, ignorance. Yeah, why not? I don't have ignorance. I'm smart, you know. I graduated from school. I don't have ignorance. Right? I have a good job. I'm not ignorant. Yeah, this is a different kind of ignorance. Okay. In the many scriptures of the Buddha, we find descriptions of practices to counter lust, such as meditating on what lies beneath the skin, flesh, bones, organs, bloods, solid waste, and urine. These are great meditations to do, where you really mentally dissect the body. You know, if you're really sitting hung up on somebody and your mind's lusting after them, do this meditation. It cures it. Okay, these reflections do indeed temporarily suppress lust, but they do not accomplish the same for hatred. So the antidote to lust doesn't counteract hatred. Yeah, and the antidote to hatred, which is patience or loving kindness, that doesn't counteract lust. Okay, so, and the reverse is also true. Those practices taught for the sake of undermining hatred, such as cultivating love, do not act as cures for lust. Here when he says lust, another translation is attachment. He's not talking just about sexual lust. He's talking about the mind that is craving, lusting after anything that it sees as attractive. Okay. Like medicines used to counteract a specific illness, they do not treat other illnesses. However, because all counterproductive emotions are based on ignorance of the true nature of things, practices that teach us how to overcome that ignorance undercut all afflictive emotions. The antidote to ignorance addresses all troubles. This is the extraordinary gift of insight. Okay, so insight is into the nature of reality is like the medicine that counteracts ignorance, and ignorance is the root of all the other afflictive emotions. So it would kind of be like, one medicine that could cut off all the diseases. Yeah, I mean, we don't have that. We have different medicines for different diseases, which are what he's saying that some, on a more general level, thinking about impermanence or, will counteract clinging attachment. Thinking about love will counteract anger. Yeah, but we want the one that cuts all of it. Okay. As preparation for developing insight into how you, other persons, and things actually exist. Did I turn this on? Is it on? Is it working? Oh, okay. As preparation for developing interest into how you, other persons, and things actually exist, it is crucial to study spiritual teachings closely, thinking about them again and again. This is important because in order to generate a state that allows us to penetrate clear through to reality, we must first correct our mistaken ideas about existence. So here's what His Holiness is saying is it's really important in our spiritual practice to learn. Not just to sit down and meditate, but to learn first, so we learn how to meditate correctly. We learn what to meditate about. We learn what kind of conclusions that we want our meditations to come to. Yeah, and I'm saying this because, once words like meditate and karma and things like that appear in Time magazine, they get really, really diluted. And people start making up their own variety of things. Okay? So if we really want to meditate, we have to learn how to do it. And so similarly, if we want to cut off the root of our troubles, ignorance, then we have to really learn, what are the incorrect ideas we have, why are they incorrect, and how do things really exist. And then after having a general idea about these things, then to start to meditate so we can find the wrong ideas within ourselves and begin to correct them. Okay. Otherwise, we just sit down, like I said, somebody says, "Oh, ignorance is the root of all of." Oh, ignorance. Okay, so I'll go back to school, and that'll solve my ignorance. Well, no. Okay. So this is the reason why we need to learn from, spiritual teachers, so that we learn, what does ignorance mean? Okay. Same way with attachment or anger, any of these things. Just hearing the word, we don't necessarily understand what it's talking about. So important to learn, then to think about what we learn, and then we put it into practice and meditate on it. Okay? So, now the section called Identifying Ignorance. To succeed at developing ignorance, first you need to identify ignorance. Okay? Ignorance in this context is not just a lack of knowledge. It is an active misapprehension of the nature of things. It mistakenly assumes that people and things exist in and of themselves by way of their own nature. This is not an easy concept to grasp, but it is very important to identify this faulty perception, for it is at the source of the destructive emotions, such as attachment and hatred. In Buddhism, we repeatedly speak of emptiness, but if you do not see how people mistakenly attribute to things their own inherent existence, it is impossible to understand emptiness. You have to recognize, at least in a rough way, what you are falsely superimposing on phenomena before you can understand the emptiness that exists in its stead. Understanding how you actually exist, who you really are, without the overlay of false imagination, is the main topic of this book. Okay? So, ignorance isn't just a not knowing. Okay? It's not just, I don't know the nature of reality. Ignorance is a mental factor that actively misapprehends how things exist. Okay? That actually grasps them in existing in the complete opposite way from the way they do exist. Okay? And we are so ignorant that we don't recognize our ignorance. You know? And we buy into the ignorant view and think our ignorance is reality. And it's only when we start looking at things a little bit more closely that we begin to call into question how we normally see things. And even when you hear the words a lot, still actually identifying it in our life is not so easy. Yeah, it's not so easy. So the ignorance, okay, let's start this way. Everything that we see, you know, the things around us all exist dependent on causes and conditions, right? Would you agree with that? That you depend on causes and conditions, and the food you ate, and the building, all these things exist depending on causes and conditions, right? Now, when you think I for a minute, I, me, you know, when you have that feeling of I and me, do you feel like that exists only due to causes and conditions? And if the causes and conditions weren't there, you wouldn't exist? Do you feel like that? No, we don't, do we? You know, I'm here. Okay, things exist by causes and conditions, fair enough, but I'm here. And okay, the cup won't exist if the causes and conditions for the cup aren't there. But I'm still going to exist. What are you talking about? Saying that I'm not going to exist if the causes for me don't exist. What are you talking about? Of course I exist. I'm independent of causes. Isn't that kind of our feeling inside? Okay? So that's our feeling inside. I'm here, you know, I'm not dependent on clay and this kind of stuff. But that's our feeling. But what's the reality? Are we dependent on other things? Are we dependent on causes and conditions? We sure are. Yeah, we're dependent on our parents. Yeah, our body's dependent on the sperm and egg and all the food we ate. Our mind's dependent on previous moments of consciousness. None of these things just kind of appear magically and remain permanently and eternally without ever changing. And yet when we say me, I, we feel like, you know, there's that's there. That we can really count on to exist, right? Everything else comes and goes, but I'm here. Right? Wrong. Yeah. So this is how, you know, an example of how ignorance misapprehends things. Yeah. If we take another something, you know, we take this thing, yeah. When we look at it, we say it's a cup. And we feel it has some nature of being a cup right inside of it. Yeah. And as if it's radiating cup nature. Nobody needed to... When you look at this, does it seem like somebody needed to call this a cup for it to be a cup? Does it? Or does it seem to just have cup nature? Cup essence? Doesn't seem to be radiating cup? So that, you know, I mean, any idiot, come on, who walks in this room should know it's a cup. Right? Why should they know? Because it's a cup. You know, it's really a cup. I mean, in here is a cup. In here is a cup, right?
Well, it's definitely not a car.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a car. Why isn't it a car? Because it has the nature of cup. And that nature of cup exists right inside of this thing. Yeah? And that's why it's a cup, and it's not a car, and it's not a giraffe. Okay? But if we look and we try and find what is it in here that is the nature of cup, what are we going to point to? If I drop this on the floor, yeah, then we have a bunch of shards, don't we? Are any of them a cup? No. So wait a minute, I thought there was a cup in here. Something that makes it a cup in here. If that were the case, when I drop it on the floor, the thing that was the cup should bounce up and say, here I am, I'm the cup. Yeah. But that's not what happens. What we wind up with is a mess, not a cup. Okay? And yet it's so strange because when we look at it, it really seems like it has the essence of cup in it.
Well, that's the example of part of it, because even if you drop it and it's in pieces, what do you say? I dropped my cup.
Exactly.
So it's still, for you, it's still...
It's still a cup, even though it's not a cup anymore. Is it? Because it can't really perform the actions of a cup. Yes, a broken cup, a cup. Can you drink out of it? No.
Does it function as a cup?
No, it doesn't function as a cup. If somebody tried to sell you a broken cup and said, oh, this is a beautiful cup, what would you say? You know, forget it. Yeah? Okay? But so it's strange because when we don't examine it, it seems that things have their essence in them. But when we do examine, we can't find what that essence is. In the same way, you know, it feels like there's a real me in here. Somewhere in here there's a real me. Yeah. But if we try and find what it is that's really me, yeah, none of the parts of our body is me. Yeah? Do you think you're your body? Do you think you're your body? Sometimes it feels like I'm my body, doesn't it?
Finger, I sure did.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes we really feel I'm my body. But if I were my body, then I should be able to find me inside the body. Okay, if I take this body apart and try and find me, again, what do I have? Another mess. You know? Some kidneys over here, and a brain, and a pancreas, and a spleen, and some intestines, and a brain, and an esophagus, and yeah, are any of those things you? You don't look sure. Are they you? Are they you? If your arm got, if you had to have your arm amputated and your arm was lying here on the table, would you say that's me?
That's my arm.
Yeah, we'd say lots of different things, wouldn't we? Yeah. Yeah. Whose arm?
People who have that problem already, even though their arm's still attached, they go, what is this? It's an arm. Is it your arm? No.
Yeah. You don't recognize it. Okay. But just, if we were our body, we should be able to identify something in the body that's us. Okay. But then that also gets tricky because if we're our body, then are we the baby's body, or the toddler's body, or the adolescent body, or the adult body, or the middle-aged body, or the old-age body? Which body are we?
The current body.
Yeah, but the current body changes, doesn't it? Scientists tell us that, our cells are changing all the time. Every 7 years we have a whole different set of cells. And even from moment to moment, we all know that our electrons are buzzing around and changing and position, and that, kind of at a microscopic level, all these digestion processes and things are going on inside of our body. So our body isn't stagnant, it's changing. So then which body is it?
Or is the bacteria that's inside our body?
Yeah.
Somebody else's body.
Right. So, when we look, what do we find as my body? And also, is my body the same as me? Yeah. Sometimes we feel like my body is me. But if my body were me, then how could I say my mind? Because if my body were me, then whenever I said me, I meant my body. So then when I said my mind, I would mean my body's mind. Yeah? Or if I were my body, then when I said I'm thinking, I would mean my body's thinking. Does your body think?
Depends on who you talk to.
Yeah. So, it gets a little difficult in here. Well, what exactly, who are we? We feel like there's a me there, but exactly who is there? Okay, so here what we're beginning to see is that we have some notions about ourselves that when we start investigating those notions using reasoning, our notions kind of get a little bit fuzzy, or they totally break down completely. So then we have to say to ourselves, well, maybe my notions, maybe there's something not so correct in them. Okay? So the whole thing of identifying ignorance is looking at how we think things exist and then investigating, do they in fact exist that way? A very good way to do it on another level is when we see beauty. Okay, somebody's going to look at, what can I use? Beautiful. It's pretty cloth, isn't it? Yeah, isn't it pretty cloth? Don't you think it's pretty cloth? Okay. So if this were pretty cloth, then wouldn't everybody see pretty cloth? Do all of you see pretty cloth? How many think this is pretty? How many think it's not pretty? Okay. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because when we look at it and we see pretty, it seems like the pretty is right inside the cloth itself, doesn't it? Doesn't seem like the pretty has anything to do with our mind. It seems like it's in the cloth. But if that were the case, then everybody else who had normal sensory experiences should see the beauty inside of this piece of cloth. Okay. What about a person who you think is fantastic? Yeah? Like this wonderful, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious person who you think is just wonderful. Yeah? Does everybody else think that person's wonderful? Yes? You said yes. You think everybody else thinks they're wonderful?
Sometimes.
Yeah. Try it. Go and ask around if everybody thinks the person you think is so wonderful is wonderful.
Yeah, ask their ex.
Yeah? Yeah, try it on your ex. Now try it with your ex's new boyfriend or girlfriend, who thinks they're wonderful. And do you have that view? No. Okay. Yeah. If you're the new boyfriend or girlfriend of somebody else's ex, you think that person's fantastic. Yeah. What does their ex think? Difference of opinion. Okay, they're wrong, we're right, But, if really, if the beauty or the goodness existed inside a person, everybody should see that person exactly the same way. Yeah? But not everybody does. It's not the case. So the beauty isn't in the person. The beauty has something to do with our mind, something to do with the perceiver. But when we look at somebody that we consider wonderful, we don't think that how they appear to us has anything to do with our mind. We feel like they have beauty from their own side. Yeah. Goodness, fantasticism, fantastosity. What's the noun of fantastic? Yeah. Whatever it is, whatever the noun is, you think it's in that person, but it's not. Okay. So here we're beginning to see that how we see things isn't necessarily the way they exist. Okay? And you might say, well, so what? Yeah, so what? Well, if you think, here's a good example. I had some friends many years ago when I lived in Singapore, and they had a daughter who fell in love with this one guy who said he was an economist. And, they went out for a long time, and she thought he was just fantastic, Right inside of him is all this goodness and wonderfulness and everything like that. And she brought him home to meet her parents. And her dad starts asking the guy, what do you think about John Kenneth Galbraith? And the guy didn't know who he was. So the dad, the red flag started waving, and found out that this guy had been making up a whole identity and so on and so forth for his daughter for years. And luckily, this happened before they got married. Okay? So here, when the daughter was looking at this guy, she thought he really was all of these things. In fact, he wasn't. Yeah? And so there you can see that if we apprehend people incorrectly, it could be a big problem. Okay? So that's the point, when we're talking about, well, so what if we don't see things exactly the way they exist? Why is that a problem? Well, if, for example, we're imputing goodness into something that doesn't have that, and thinking it exists inside that person. Because I can imagine very well when the father told the daughter, look, this guy is deceiving you, that she probably at the beginning said, no way, I love him, he's wonderful. So, our ignorance can definitely bring us big problems when we misapprehend things. In the same way, if we... I remember, when the economy went bad a few years ago, then there was one, I forget which auto industry he was in, but one German, man, CEO, and he committed suicide. And I can't remember who it is. Do you know? Anyway, and why? Because he thought that, money and social standing had goodness inside themselves. And when the economy went down, he lost both. Yeah, and so he felt, my life's useless. But, that's a wrong conception, isn't it?
That's what happened to
Yeah. So you misapprehend things and, think our wrong conception is a right conception, and then we do things that hurt ourselves and hurt the people that we care about. Okay? So that's why it's important to break through our ignorance. Okay. All of the Buddha's many teachings are aimed at attaining liberation from cyclic existence, with its endless movement from one life to another, and achieving omniscience. When we say cyclic existence, this is the system of rebirth, where we are born in one life after another under the influence of ignorance, under the influence of afflictions and karma. And while life has much goodness, we're also subject to aging, sickness, and death, too, which aren't the thing we really, think is so great. Yeah, if we had our druthers, we wouldn't, choose aging, sickness, and death. But aging, sickness, and death are the direct result of birth. Yeah, if you're not born under the influence of afflictions, you're not going to have a body that gets old and sick and dies under the influence of ignorance and afflictions. Okay, so that thing of just, being pushed by our ignorance, our anger, our attachment, into one rebirth after the next is what we call cyclic existence. Liberation is stopping that whole thing, okay, that whole cycle, and freeing the mind from the ignorance, attachment, and anger. And when the mind is free, then when we can also cultivate compassion for all beings, then we can really do rather spectacular things with our human potential and be of great benefit to others. And when we die, not get born just propelled by our ignorance, but be able to, by the force of compassion, create manifestations for the benefit of other living beings. Okay, so when we talk about cyclic existence and omniscience here, that's kind of what we're talking about. Yeah?
Can I ask a question?
Uh-huh.
Okay, we're talking about how there is no I.
Uh-huh.
And now we're talking about cyclic existence and reincarnation.
Uh-huh.
If there is no I, what is being reborn?
Okay, so if there's no I, what is it? That's being reborn. I remember there was one movie some years ago. I even forget the name of it, but they showed it like somebody died, and then, there was this little kind of spirit-like thing that floated up out of them that looked just like them, and then went over here and landed in a dog. This was in the movie, So then I was wondering, if they went over there to the dog, then what comes out of the dog when the dog dies? Does it look like the person, or does it look like the dog? Yeah. But we sometimes have this notion, there's some kind of ethereal thing that's kind of still me, even when my body is gone. We don't, for rebirth to function, it isn't necessary that there's some permanent thing that goes from one life to the next. Okay, I really like the example of a river. Now, if you look at the Spokane River, okay, we call it Spokane River. It has one name, like it's one thing. Is the Spokane River one thing? Well, from one viewpoint, it's one thing. It's one river. We don't say the Spokane rivers. Okay. But on the other hand, it's not really one thing, because where does it start? Anybody, where's the origin of the Spokane River? Lake Coeur d'Alene? Really? And then before Lake Coeur d'Alene, where did the water come from?
St. Joe River, I think. Coeur d'Alene River and St. Joe.
North Coeur d'Alene.
The
Coeur d'Alene River and St. Joe rivers.
Coeur d'Alene rivers and St. Joe rivers. Okay, flow into Lake Coeur d'Alene. Okay. And then, so you have the Coeur d'Alene River and the St. Joe River, and they go back and back and back, right? And then you come, and then you have Lake Coeur d'Alene, and then you have the Spokane River coming out of that, and it goes into Spokane, and then you have the falls, and then where does it go from there? Goes, south?
Right by my house.
Right by your house. Okay. Okay. So that's the most important place it is. Right by Vita's house. Yeah. And river is, yeah. But if we look, what we call the Spokane River is actually a collection of parts, isn't it? You know? It's actually a collection of parts. And there's physical parts, like physical segments to the river. Okay? But then also, there's the water that flows through those. So is the water the river? Or are the banks the river? Or the dirt at the bottom? What exactly is the river? Okay, when we look, what is the Spokane River? And where exactly is the river, aside from Vita's house? You know? Where exactly is the Spokane River? And what exactly is it? You know, can we just take out, you know, a handful of water and say that's the Spokane River? That wouldn't work too well. If we said the Spokane River was just, you know, what flowed between Coeur d'Alene and Spokane, that wouldn't be sufficient. Okay, so we have one term, and we all know what we're referring to when we say Spokane River. But can we identify something that is Spokane River? No. Okay. So in the same way, when we talk about, you know, getting reborn, or the continuity of the mind, no, we can say I, or we can say mind, or the continuity of the mind, and we all kind of have a general idea of what's going on. But can we isolate one moment of mind that is actually going from one life to the next? Or one moment of mind that is the mind that is present during all of our lives? Okay? When we start to analyze, again, we can't find something in particular that we can draw a line around and say that is the thing that is reborn. But when we don't analyze, we can say the person gets reborn, or the continuity of mind goes from one life to the next. So there's a difference between what just general appearances are and what we think about when we just communicate conventionally to each other. Okay, there's a difference between that and what happens when we actually investigate and say, what is this thing really? What does the word Spokane River really refer to? What does the word I really refer to? What does the word mind really refer to? Okay. When we analyze, we come up with something totally different than when we don't analyze. Okay? When we don't analyze, our problem is we think that whatever appears to us exists in the way it appears. And it appears real, so we think it must be real and findable and objective. That's the way it appears to us. But when we analyze, we can't find it. Okay? So the way things appear and the way they exist is discordant. It doesn't match. Okay? So there doesn't need to be any particular thing that we find that goes from one life to the next. It's just one moment following the next. Okay? Mm-hmm.
But you have this individuality, right? So there's somebody who's trying to tame their mind.
Mm-hmm.
And what is this kind of individuality, what is going on?
What's the individuality that's going on? It's just because we say Dani and Yeshi. That's all. Yeah. It feels like there's a real Dani there who's working on her mind. Okay? But who's the Dani who's working on that mind? Yeah? Who's the...
You know, then I could say, then if there's no difference, then there's no Dani, then I don't need to take responsibility for my own.
You don't? And if you don't take responsibility for your own mind, who experiences happiness and unhappiness? Dani. Okay. So, what Dani is simply a label. It's simply a label. On the basis of that body and mind, we say Dani. But we can't find anything that really is her. If in her previous life, let's say she were a celestial being, would we call that celestial being Dani? If in her previous life she were a frog, would we call that frog Dani? No. Okay. And yet there's a continuity there. It's a continuity of cause and conditions. But there's nothing solid there. There's nothing solid there. And this is our problem, is that, we can intellectually understand that, but when push comes to shove, there's the internal feeling of I am here, and I am an individual. Right?
Especially if there's a shove.
Yeah. I mean, I'm here, I'm an individual, I'm in control.
Yes.
Right? Don't we feel like I'm in control?
Yeah.
Yeah? How much are we in control? Yeah? We feel like we should be able to control our body and mind. If we could control our body and mind, can we control? Then we should be able to keep our body from aging. Yeah. We should be able to actually have some concentration. Yeah. But when we look, there's no independent person there who's kind of like the czar or the president or whatever, who's managing the body and mind. What we call me is just a label that's given independence upon a body and mind being conjoined at this time. But we don't feel like that's how we really exist. We feel like there's something more than the body and mind there. Yeah? There's me. Me! And my happiness is the most important. There's a real me, and so my happiness is most important. My ideas are best. My way is the way it's got to be. Yeah? So you can see, based on this misapprehension of just the self, we get into all these other kinds of emotions and views that, get really problematic in our lives. Yeah? Mm-hmm.
I wonder about, we have this body and mind that has continuity, but don't our actions come into it? Like, we have actions,
Mm-hmm.
or is that just the sort of condition or?
Yeah, we have actions then. Are you saying who's doing the actions?
No, I'm saying, like, isn't that another element of it? Like that we have our actions and that affects our body and mind?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about my
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Are you asking, this is what's been going through my mind as you've been saying that, is that what's going on is a collection of causes, or I guess karma? Is that what's,
Well, karma are our actions.
okay. So then what's going on is that there's a cause and the effect is another life. Is that
Yeah.
understanding that correctly? And so what he's asking is if that's sort of a bundle of causes that we've, oh boy, I don't know, here we go. That we created by going through a life, that then those causes transfer over to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you were saying,
I'm sorry,
that,
confused.
you know, that we don't have control, but we have control of our actions.
We have some control, but there's no solid thing that is me that has control. There's no governing I. That's the czar, the dictator. We feel like there is a dictator. You know, I should be able to dictate what my body and mind do. Doesn't it feel like that when you say me? Yeah. If I only tried hard enough, I could will my body and mind to do something. Do you have that feeling? You know, if I really wanted to, you know, like I see, why I can't concentrate in meditation. But if I really wanted to, I could just will my mind. Because there's this concrete me that's definitely in charge, that can force its way on the mind. But there isn't that concrete me. Yeah, let's
Okay.
keep going, okay? Mhm. Okay, ignorance is the root of everything that stands in the way of these attainments, such as liberation and omniscience. Ignorance binds us to suffering. Therefore, ignorance has to be clearly identified. To do so, we must consider how this false quality of inherent existence appears to the mind. Okay, so we were just talking about that, how it appears to the mind. Second, how the mind assents to it. So things appear beautiful, then we think they are beautiful from their own side. The mind assents to the appearance. And third, how the mind bases so many ideas on this fundamental mistake. So something appears beautiful, I hold on to it, I assent to that appearance, it is beautiful from its own side, and then the false ideas that come, therefore I need to have it. And my happiness depends on it. And I deserve it, and I'm going to do everything I can to get it, no matter who I hurt in the process. Mm-hmm. So that's why we have these, that's why the whole thing is problematic. Ignorance is not just other than knowledge, it is the contradiction of knowledge. Scientists tell us that the more closely we examine things, the more likely we are to find empty space. Okay? Well, here's another way. You know, science tells us that our body is mostly empty space. Do you feel like your body is mostly empty space? No. Okay? So is there something wrong with, is there a difference between how our body appears to us and how it exists? Big difference. So that's just, you know, in terms of science, how things are. Yeah. Ignorance, by relying on appearances, superimposes onto persons and things a sense of concreteness that in fact is not there. Ignorance would have us believe that these phenomena exist in some fundamental way. They're really that. Really that. Okay. Through ignorance, what we see around us seems to exist independently, without depending on other factors for its existence. But this is not the case. That's what I was saying when we feel the sense of I, do we feel like we exist only because the causes and conditions for ourselves exist? No, we don't feel that. Yeah, there's something else there. Okay. But there's nothing else there. There's only the causes and conditions, that's all. Okay. By giving people and things around us this exaggerated status, we are drawn into all sorts of overblown and ultimately hurtful emotions. So this, the thing about getting attached is one way we get tricked. Also, when somebody insults you, or somebody says some words that you find unpleasant. Yeah, somebody looks at you and says, "You're a total idiot, you can't do anything right." Okay? We hear that, and it's like, we all know what it means, right? And it seems like that, what that person said, we all know what it means. It all has its meaning right there embedded in those words. And when those words hit us, especially when they come out of the mouth of somebody we respect or somebody we care for, it's like there's pain, just in those words. You're an idiot, you can't do anything right. And we just immediately feel pain. And then we get angry, we get upset, we yell, we scream, we cry, we slam doors, we throw things. Okay, what exactly is happening? Okay, somebody is opening their mouth. Their larynx, or whatever it is doing whatever the larynxes do. Some sound is coming out. Sound waves, sound waves? Yeah, just sound waves, right? Sound waves. Yeah, is there idiot in the sound waves? Is there you can't do anything right in the sound waves? Is there pain and rejection and isolation and hurt feelings in the sound waves? No. When those sound waves hit here, then the hammer and drum, and anvil and stirrup. Yeah, they do their thing. They wiggle around. And then and then that triggers the synapses, and so they do their chemical thing, an electrical thing, and you get all these chemical electrical things going on. Is there pain in any of that? Is there meaning in any of that? Is there jerk going through your synapses up to the brain?
Well, homunculus going up there.
Yeah. The way it appears to us is as if, just those words have pain, rejection, sorrow, bitterness, the other person's horrible intention. They deliberately want to hurt me, right? Those words have all of that packed into them. In it by itself, independent of me. Those words really have all of that in them. So then when I hear them, I have no alternative about how I should feel. I'm just devastated. Okay, that's the way we operate. When we look at the process, does that make any sense? It doesn't make any sense, does it? All that pain, all that hurt, all those bad feelings are not in the words. And if that person said those same words, but instead of their eyeballs looking at us, their eyeballs were 3 feet in this direction, looking at somebody else, would those same words have the same meaning and potency? No. But actually it's the same words, just the person's head is turned in a different direction. Okay? So, what is creating our experience? Is it an objective experience out there, or is our mind creating things? Our mind's creating stuff, isn't it? It's imputing all sorts of meaning onto airwaves. And then we get so upset, we feel like we have no other way we could possibly feel. And then our mind says the relationship's over, they said I'm an idiot. There's no basis for this relationship. It's got to end right now. I can't stand it. I'm packing my bags. Goodbye. Forget it. All it was airwaves. Okay?
But I mean, when you are a child, you can't protect yourself. There are people who are screaming at you, saying that word.
Yeah.
And, okay, you are kind of victim of it in this moment.
Yeah.
And then,
We're born with ignorance.
yeah, we are born with ignorance. And then these voices, these waves, this is a kind of energy too, right?
There's real, inherent, hostile energy. The vibes. Show me a vibe. I want to see a vibe. But there's hostile energy. There's the vibes. And there are those vibes like little ants crawling towards you. That's what it feels like, right?
There's something in this world. This man is called immortal, and he says that people who are speaking to water or plant, the plant can die because you say definitely all the time bad words to this plant. And then even the same with water. We are existing of over 90% of water, right? Or 90%, I don't know exactly, maybe. And then if somebody is constantly saying bad words at us, and we have not a strong mind who understands emptiness, then we are affected by it. But it's only, this one?
But it's our mind that's affected, isn't it?
Yeah, but
it's our mind.
It shows how intense, how much power we need, to counteract these.
Yeah, but it's showing how ignorance affects us.
Yeah.
What it's showing is the effects of ignorance. Yeah, and how harmful ignorance is. Yeah, that's exactly the thing. Because ignorance completely misunderstands all those things. Yeah. And like you said, as little kids, we don't know, so we believe everything we hear. That's kind of a double ignorance. But also as adults, we still believe everything we hear, don't we? We haven't really gotten much smarter. When we're 3 years old and they say you're stupid, we believe them. When we're 30 years old and they say you're stupid, we still believe them.
Yeah, but if the plant can't understand, how come she's dying?
I don't think this works all the time. Otherwise, we would have gotten rid of our knapweed a long time ago. Yeah? We wouldn't have to go out there and fix that stuff. Because our bad vibes would have zapped it already. Yeah, should we all try that? I hate knapweed. We all say it together. John?
People deal with the sound that they hear from somebody who's angry or something like that by turning their hearing aids down.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. eating.
Yeah, right? Yeah, uh-huh.
You know, when people say share a convention of some sort, like language, or,
Mhm.
you know, the rules of grammar or something, for example. I mean, isn't that a conduit for the, I'm going to use bad vibes. I couldn't think of a better word. Isn't that a conduit for that? I mean, I don't know, I'm almost thinking I'm answering my own question, but, you know, it's still, I mean, there's a shared thing that can be tweaked by the other person.
Yeah, I mean, there's shared things, and there's a shared conventional reality. But exactly what it is, we can't completely nail down. You know, and if this thing with bad vibes, you know, we all understand what bad vibes are, right? I know we don't have them, it's other people who have them. They're giving us their bad vibes. But, you know, if you do, let's say, the taking and giving meditation, where we imagine taking on others' suffering and giving them our happiness, then we're voluntarily taking on their bad vibes, and then those bad vibes stop being so bad. What makes bad vibes bad is because we're always like this about them. You know? Sometimes if you just relax and we're not so reactive to bad vibes, then they lose their power. So where's the power in the bad vibes? Is it in the vibes? Those poor little vibes. Yeah. So, you know, it has so much to do with our own mind. Mm-hmm. So there's a conventional thing, but we're also creating it. Okay?
Ignorance is part of that convention.
Yeah. Okay. So here when he says, by giving people and things around us this exaggerated status, we are drawn into all sorts of overblown and ultimately hurtful emotions. That's true, isn't it? Yeah? Think of how you've reacted to certain words that have been said to you, as if those words had truly existent meaning inside themselves. Yeah? Incredible. We're so controlled by that. And this is all the product of ignorance. Hmm? Identifying this false appearance of things and acknowledging our tacit assent to this illusion are the first steps towards realizing that you and other beings, as well as all other objects, do not exist the way they appear to. They do not exist so concretely and autonomously. In the process of developing an accurate assessment of who you actually are, you need to appreciate the disparity between how you appear to your own mind and how you indeed exist. The same holds true for other people and all other phenomena in the world. Mm-hmm. So appearance and existence are not matching. They often use the example of a face in the mirror. Yeah, there's a reflection there, but is there a face in the mirror? No, there's only an appearance of a face, but an appearance of a face is not a real face. When we watch TV, okay, or you watch the internet, you can experience a whole range of emotions, can't you? You know, we have so many emotions when we watch different movies. Yeah, oh, they're fighting, this is terrible. Sometimes it's so awful we can't even look. But what's there? There's just a screen. There's just a screen. And then what makes the screen? Electron doing something, electrons buzzing, doing something. Or something, you know, however they make TVs operate or computer screens operate. Yeah, but all there is a screen. And yet we can watch something, and even a fictional movie, and have so many emotions, even though the movie's not true. Yeah, And even though there's no people who are really there. Okay? And we know this intellectually, don't we? But when we watch the movie, we deliberately suspend our wisdom and get completely involved in what's going on in the movie. And there's no people there. Really kind of amazing, isn't it? Isn't it amazing? Okay. So disparity between how things appear, how things exist. So that's happening in our regular life too. Things appear wonderful, things appear awful, but they all appear as if they had some existence, objective, out there from their own side. But when we investigate, we can't find what is that kind of existence they have out there that's independent of our mind or independent of anybody's mind. Yeah. Okay, and then His Holiness had a mindful reflection here, so this is kind of a summary. And he said, consider, okay, point 1, all counterproductive emotions are based on and depend upon ignorance of the true nature of persons and things. 2, there are specific ways to suppress attachment and hatred temporarily, but if we undermine the ignorance that misconceives the nature of ourselves, others, and all things, all destructive emotions are undermined. And 3, ignorance sees phenomena which actually do not exist in and of themselves as existing independent of thought. Okay, those are points to contemplate. Okay, we're on chapter 2 now, called Discovering the Source of Problems. And it again begins with a quote from Patrul Rinpoche. Attracted by light and heat, a moth flies into a flame. Stunned by the sounds of a guitar, a deer stands unaware of a hunter. Drawn by the scent of a flower, a bug is trapped inside. Attached to taste, a fish rushes to a hook. Pulled to mud, an elephant cannot escape. What he's talking about here is how we react to the sense objects in our world, and how our misunderstanding of how sense objects exist get us in so much trouble. Okay? Attracted by light and heat, a moth flies into flame. So depending on what we see, we're hooked by what we see, aren't we? We see something, we're completely hooked. You know, our attachment reacts, our anger reacts. Stunned by the sounds of a guitar, a deer stands unaware of a hunter. So sound. We hear sounds, and we're just completely at the mercy of sounds. Our discriminating wisdom is out the window. Drawn by the scent of a flower, a bug is trapped inside. So we're equally deceived by smells. Yeah? Attached to taste, a fish rushes to a hook. And how reactive we are to sense objects, and how these things wind up trapping us, hooking us. Pulled into mud. Mud is like tactile sensation. An elephant cannot escape. So we're total addicts to our five senses, the five sense objects. And we misconstrue how those things exist. We give them a mode of existence that they don't have, and then we react to that, either desiring it or pushing it away, and that creates a lot of difficulties for us, as that example with sound just showed us. Yeah. Our senses, this is His Holiness now, our senses contribute to our ignorance, to our faculties of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and smelling, tasting, and touching, feeling. Objects seem to exist in their own right. Presented with this distorted information, the mind assents to this exaggerated status of things. Buddhists call such a mind ignorant for accepting this false appearance instead of resisting it. Okay? So all these sense objects seem to exist in and of themselves, independent of us. We feel like there's a real concrete me here, and then there's this objective world out there with all these things in it that exist in and of themselves. And we're constantly knocking into all these things. Yeah? Either knocking into them or trying to grab them. The ignorant mind does not question appearances to determine if they are correct. It merely accepts that things are as they appear. And that's not necessarily the case. It's interesting, like you say, okay, let's say this were a cup of coffee. Yeah? It would look to us as if there were a cup of coffee here, right? Independent, out there, objective. But how do we know, if you ask yourselves, how do I know it's a cup of coffee? Well, you look with your eyes. You know, it's a certain kind of color. It's a brownish color. Sound, maybe you swish it. I don't know. Does coffee have a particular sound?
You heard it making in the pot.
Oh, yeah. 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 Okay. It has a certain smell, doesn't it? Yeah. I don't like the smell of coffee. It has a certain taste. There's a certain taste. You stick your finger in, it's kind of hot, and there's a certain feeling, you know, the coffee grinds and everything. So if somebody said to you, how do you know that's coffee? It's just because there's certain colors and shapes appearing here, certain sound here, certain smell, certain taste, certain touch.
And previous experience.
Yeah. But how do we know we have all those sensory experiences, but are any of them the coffee? None of them are the coffee. But when we look, it seems like there's coffee here from its own side, independent of everything else. But all there is color, sound, smell, taste, touch. And dependent upon all of those things together, we develop the conception, coffee. We give it the name, coffee. And then we impute all this stuff onto coffee. Like, it's so good, I've got to have some. The people at the Abbey are so mean for saying I can't drink coffee. You know, we get really into this whole thing. But all there is color and sound and smell and taste and touch. That's all there is. It's only on the basis of those sensory experiences that we say there's coffee. But as soon as we give the name coffee to it, we forget that we were the ones who gave it the name coffee, and we think there's something in here that is coffee.
But if I grew up in the woods and I had never seen that cup,
Mm-hmm.
and somebody gave me that and asked me, what is this? I would say, I have no idea what that is.
Right.
What do I do with it? I have no clue what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody would have to show me what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have no concept of what that cup is.
Mm-hmm.
I've never seen that before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So we learn, we impute meanings. We, as a society, come up with meanings of things. But all of this is stuff that is coming from our mind and our conceptual mind. It doesn't exist in the nature of this thing. Because if cup of coffee existed in the nature of this, then when he walked out of the woods, he would know what it was. Yeah, but he doesn't.
Or a person with Alzheimer's would know it.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, I think we'll stop right here. Wait, let me finish the paragraph at least. Oh no, I did finish the paragraph. Okay, good. Then we'll start there tomorrow. So we'll be having another talk tomorrow morning, and then this afternoon you'll have some discussion on what we've talked about so far. Yeah. See if you can find those vibes. Here you can see the power of attachment, can't you? You just hear the word coffee and the mind takes off. Hallucinating all these things, like I've got to have a cup, and I can't come to the Abbey anymore, because they won't let me have some, or I've got to bring a contraband thing of coffee and lock the doors of Gotami House, and then we'll all drink it in the morning and hope. Yeah. Okay.